Okay, hello. I hope everyone can hear me okay. What I'm going to do is, give a few moments for people's Zooms to start up, and then we'll get started. So I'll give 20 seconds or so. All right. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is the third and final episode in our webinar series on the importance and challenges of speed in today's B2B telco environment. So in today's webinar, we're going to be turning our attention to delivery, which is clearly a vital part of the process to optimize. What we'll be doing, we'll be covering the current challenges faced by businesses like yourselves in the current market, the impacts of poor delivery, and then looking at the technology, people, and process considerations that are important. We'll be taking questions from the audience at the end of the webinar. So at any point during the broadcast, if you have a question, go down to the bottom of your Zoom console. There should be a Q&A button there. And if you post a question, we'll try to get to it at the end. But now let me introduce you to our presenters for this webinar, Fawzi Faraz and Vish Kumar. So Fawzi is a Principal Business Solution Architect at CloudSense. He's one of the company's 4 founding partners, in fact, and has worked in the telecoms industry since 2007. Vish is CloudSense's VP of Industry Solutions and has worked across the full spectrum of telecommunications, including VNOs, wholesale, SMB, B2B, and B2C environments. So you're in good hands. And without further ado, I'll hand you over to Fawzi and Vish to talk about delivery. All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ed. So as Ed mentioned, this is the third session that we've got. And thank you all for making the time and effort today to join us for this. So as Ed mentioned before, we're going to talk about delivery today, but we're going to talk about it in the sense of just what is going on and what are you guys really facing. So we'll cover off some things around your challenges that are currently going on in the market. And these are a lot of the conversations that both Fawzi and I are having in the field and working through in terms of some of the industry challenges that we're seeing right across the board, which some have been perceived as normal, but others are now being challenged in terms of how do we really do things differently. We'll look at things in terms of what are those real impacts? What are the things that you really need to look at in terms of if we don't take this seriously and we don't actually fix it, or we don't look at ways that we can make it better for our customers, what can really cause and what sort of effects do we have with these things? Then we'll look at some of those key questions and the demands that our customers are having on us and have they changed over time? And then some of the technology considerations you need to think about when you're actually planning your transformations or upgrades or even changes to your delivery processes. And then I'll hand over to Fawzi. He's going to take us through some of the key things to meet our customer expectations and what are the considerations we need to think about. What does our technology need to require? And then also about our people and processes to make sure they're suitable and ready for today, but also for tomorrow in the changing landscape that we have. So jumping into it, customer experience is at the heart of everything that we at CloudSense want to do, but also what we know you guys want to do for your customers. When it comes to delivery, it's time and time again, we do talk to salespeople and then we hear the frustrations from them. And one of the key sentiments that still sticks with me today is a particular sales rep said this to me while I was in the States, that it's easier for customers to track their food delivery than it is for our telco service to be delivered. And it really struck home with me in terms of, well, that probably is a reality, because whilst telco delivery is a bit slower than your food delivery that's coming through for dinner or lunch that day, there's a level of things that customers are expecting now in this digital world that we kind of need to think about with that experience. And it's not just about the visual side of things and the ability to see that little man move on the screen. It's about having the things and anticipating what our customers are going to need today and tomorrow and being able to respond to them but then also be able to predict what's going to happen and understand that what's those reactions that we need to be prepared for, but ensure our teams are prepared for them as well. So what are the current challenges? These sound pretty simple, but they are extremely common when we talk to customers. And also when we talk to the end customers in terms of what do they really expect out of their carrier, especially when they're spending a significant amount of money with them every month or every year. So customers often, we know they change their minds. They're running a business just as much as you are. There's certain things that do make changes that they need to think about. So that could be the environment they're working in is about to change. They could be getting more staff, so therefore they need to increase the amount of bandwidth coming into there. But it could also be as simple as there's a server blew up or something fundamentally changed with the IT infrastructure, and they need to change some of those configurations and those IP addresses or even phone numbers. What we've heard from the end customer is some of the challenges they face just in regards to being able to make those changes. Whilst they understand that there's certain things that can't be done, some of the key things they look at, they just feel that should be there and they should be available for them to do it. When we talk to the carriers about some of these things and we understand their challenges they go through, and what's become now the norm is the fact that they'd have to cancel that order in the system and then rekey it with those changes and then try and work out internally to how do they accelerate that order to get back to where it was, because they have no mechanisms of being able to update or make any changes with that particular order or service that's being provisioned. Now, we talked about communication last week in a bit more detail, but when we wrap it up and we look at exactly what do we need to do and make this really worthwhile to ensure that we give our customers a great experience in the delivery process or the provisioning process, it's about keeping them informed. How you do that is dependent on the different carrier and also dependent on the customer. And we talked through some of those mediums last week. But customers, especially in that delivery process, they want to be kept informed. They want to know exactly what's happening and, more importantly, what's happening next. Have a think about also how you're setting those expectations to make sure you're reducing the inbound calls coming in. So setting the expectation up front, and it could be as simple as giving a lead behind form where we're setting and preparing the customer for what's about to change in their environment and what's about to change for their business. So for example, if we're delivering an internet service, letting them know that it's going to take between 4 and 8 weeks potentially for that service to be ready. And then we're going to need a technician to come out on site and they're going to need to install the fiber. And then another technician will turn up to install the router and so forth. And as they go through these processes, depending on where the customer is, understanding that there may be some things that may need to be part of and actually need to help with. And that could be as simple as making sure the technician has access to the comms cabinet. It's very frustrating being on the customer side, not knowing that they have to have access to that particular cabinet and there's only scheduled times that can be done. Ensuring that you set those expectations up front with the end customer adds to the value in terms of that delivery process and the informative process, and ensuring that all expectations are met so you know the customer is expecting what's coming. Updating technical and non-technical information. This is one that end customers talk to us about, as well as our current customers and also the industry as a whole, in terms of what is the best way of doing this and when do we stop it? But first and foremost, what is this and why does it happen? So as we talked about before, there are changes to businesses in terms of how things are happening and the fact they're taking on new IT infrastructure, which may cause a change to the IP address ranges. But as simple as number ranges, if they're ordering fixed voice services, they may have forgotten some, or they may have acquired another business that they want to bring into it. These are very, very small changes, but we understand they also cause a lot of things that are disruptive within the telco in terms of that delivery process. So we've talked to a lot of telcos and understanding how do they handle these, because they are quite common. Strangely, it becomes notes that they put within different systems. and hope that they're actually fulfilled when the technician goes on site or when the process is coming towards the end. They can add these in right at the end to make sure that they're done. But often what we do find is these are probably left out and the delivery is completed and signed off on, but then that customer's on the call to the account manager or to customer care, tying up those lines because they didn't get these key components they'd actually asked for. And as a result, you've now disrupted their business and left them with a really, really bad experience. And this is something that we've seen time and time again with a lot of customers. But it can't be that hard. It can, and it does have some serious impacts if we're not careful. And we need to think about what are those impacts and how do they really resonate within your business as a carrier and what can actually happen. So naturally, if you give a poor experience, 9 times out of 10, you are going to lose more deals with that particular customer. So if they're not loyal to you in terms of their connections with their multiple sites, or whatever they're looking in terms of starting with you, they could be starting with mobile and then taking fixed services. They won't be looking at those other products because of that whole delivery experience being extremely poor. They will look at trust as a big factor for them, and it is one with a lot of end customers, especially in the environment we are in right now, where everything is accessible really quickly. Escalations are still extremely common, especially when you're dealing with a lot of the larger customers with multiple sites. If certain sites are not being delivered correctly or there's certain things that happen, customers will escalate quickly and they'll go around you. Now, we're not talking about just general escalations of calling your boss. They will use other outlets. They will go to government bodies. They'll also go to the media, depending on the size of customer that they are and the impact that they have in the overall environment they work in. With extremely large customers, one of the worst things we could be in a situation is we've really, really not delivered to our expectations with our customers, and we've really not delivered on anything we said we would do. And there are service level agreements as part of the delivery. We'll end up giving credits to these customers and losing whatever margin we made on that particular customer as we go forward. Not only does this ruin our credibility, but it also means that we have to give out real money and sacrifice some of our revenue for some of the mistakes we've made in the delivery process. Perception, it's one that we've talked about before in terms of, does it really happen? Does it not? In the B2B environment, it does. People move between companies quite often, and especially if you are working within a particular vertical, those people will move across companies quite often and quite frequently. But giving people great experiences means that your recommendation's already been done as they move between companies. When you don't have really good experiences, it makes it a lot harder to break them down. And it makes it even harder when that person has moved across and talks about those war stories that they've just gone through with your particular carrier, and these are the things that we need to be aware of. The last but not least is one that is very, very impactful for a lot of companies that we've talked to over the last couple of years, and it's around the pre-activation cancellation rate. So whilst we've done a great job in terms of selling, communicating, and telling the customer, these are all the great things you're going to get for your service, when it comes to delivery and there's certain things that they just don't get told about, or there's an experience in it they don't like, customers will cancel their service and go with someone else. The demand in terms of being able to have something quickly and easily is extremely high, but then also the customer sentiment of being able to move quickly and easily is extremely true. And as we've made the buying journey a lot easier for a lot of carriers, the ability for customers to move quickly is also there. So having that visibility and ensuring that we support the customer and we cover off all those things in delivery is extremely important, especially to the bottom line and especially to our revenue numbers as we go forward. So we've talked to quite a few customers in terms of what are some of the key things that your customers are asking during the delivery process. So at CloudSense, we look at this in terms of how do we support you, support your customers, but also how do we make sure that we understand what you're going through to help with your processes. So some of the key and common requests we get from end customers into telcos and saying, how do we really help you? Could be around as simple as just updating key components on the order. You've changed the office manager, so I need you to update those contact details for me and make sure they're reflective on that order. So the site contact is also updated. So they know who to talk to and they also know who to call. And they also need to know who gets those latest communications because the email address or the contact SMS number has changed. Parts and components. So we're not changing the overall router. We may be changing certain configurations within it. They're not commercially impacting, but they're just certain things to match the IT infrastructure that we've just updated within our business. This is probably one of the most common ones we get. And it's one of the ones that cause a lot of challenges within a lot of carriers because of the functionality doesn't exist to actually support these in the field. So some of these configuration changes are written down in emails and then sent to the technician on site to say, can you do this out there in the field when you're delivering it? And at times they're missed. If they're busy, they will miss them. They won't do them. Appointment dates and changes. This is something that's extremely common. It's one that we were very surprised about when we talked to a lot of customers and also a lot of carriers about, is the ability to manage these and be able to make those changes quickly and easily themselves. Customers get extremely frustrated with having to call their account manager or call the delivery team to say, sorry, can't make it today because I need to move this, and this. Can we look for a different slot? And then having to go back and forth with their particular delivery person to try and get that scheduled slot is extremely cumbersome. Customers want the ability to make those changes really easily without having to go through multiple phone calls, but they also want to do it in their own time and not have to do it during business hours because they're busy running their business during their time too. The next steps in the process, they want a full view in terms of what's happening next. As much as you want to deliver the service in a very timely manner, the customer's really excited about that service arriving. They really want it to be there on time. They really want to start using it because they have plans for that particular service. It's already part of their process. But they also want to know, do they need to adjust their own business plans to accommodate any changes that are coming through? So whether there's delays or whether there's changes, they need to be aware of it. And probably the number one frustration that we hear from end customers is the technician just didn't turn up. We didn't get a notification. I canceled all my meetings for the day because the technician was going to turn up. Not a phone call, not a text message, not an email. It's now 5 o'clock. He was going to be here between 8 and 5. I can't call anyone until tomorrow. Probably one of the most frustrating things, but it's also one of the key things during the delivery process that really impacts things. Now, some things are just not in your control. We get that. But being able to work with the customer and also give them a way to be able to communicate, say, here is a portal to notify us if the technician didn't turn up today, or as simple as having somebody available via a chat message or even a phone call to be able to support those after hours side of things as well, changes the dynamics in that customer experience really quickly and really easily. Technology considerations. So we've talked about technology right the way through the series about being a tool, and it doesn't change here, especially in the delivery process. So we know a lot of telcos work through their technology stack, and spend a lot of money on it. But it's also a very tough nut in the delivery space because you have your BSS, which has a service order management layer within it. Your OSS, and then also your BSS with a commercial order layer within it. It just comes down to the experience you really want to provide your customers. You could have the best tools in the world, but if you haven't focused on the processes and you haven't focused on the culture, it doesn't really help without being able to build them out to actually satisfy the customer's requirements and give them a great experience. But when you're looking at the technology, have a look at certain things that support what your customers are asking for today. So around those self-serve and self-enablement components, allowing them to make those changes in their own time, allowing them to do them frictionlessly. So there's no issues for them to have to call in unless it's extremely urgent or it's something they need a bit of help with. It makes that interaction far more meaningful, but it also means that your customers are far more happier with you as well. The other is also about giving them full visibility in terms of that full end-to-end process of the order, ensuring that they know what to expect and ensuring that your team has also set those expectations really quickly and really early in the piece. Have a think about the processes that you have in your delivery cycles as well, ensuring that you're covering off all those nuances that may exist, but it's also a lean process so people can follow it really quickly and easily, and you're obfuscating a lot of the complexities from the customer, but then also from the visuals that you're providing them. The one thing that we do find surprising is around scalability. Like most telcos selling fixed, a lot of your fixed orders and a lot of your data orders are long-running orders, and they can go from 4 to 6 weeks, anywhere up to months, depending on what's happening and what infrastructure you have to build within that process. So ensuring your delivery systems can actually handle the scale of hundreds, if not thousands of orders going through it at the same time, but then also concurrent orders being able to be supported throughout that process for long periods of times. It's something that a lot of customers haven't thought about. It's probably one that does get missed quite a lot. And if it's not looked at properly, especially in high volume periods, you may end up seeing orders fail or completely fall out or just not make it to the relevant systems in time due to the fact that it can't handle the scale. So we've just covered a whole load of things in terms of how the customer's challenges are with you in terms of the carrier, but then also some of your challenges that you have with being able to meet those customer demands and not really having the right processes or tools at play. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Fawzi and get him to talk about just how do we meet these customer demands and what are some of those key things that we need to look at. Over to you, Fawzi.
Thanks, Vish. Let's stay on the topic of technology and the idea that every single part of your technology real estate, of your technology stack, needs to have a specific set of responsibilities, and those responsibilities really need to be respected. So if we look at the COM layer and the SOM layer, and what exactly is it that they are supposed to do, and how that affects your ability to deliver properly. The COM layer is responsible for all the commercial events that need to happen to an order once it has been submitted. So you've gone through the order capture and you've submitted the order and you now want to be able to deliver it. All of these events, all of the communications, and Vish talked about how important communication is to the customer, but also within the internal teams themselves, so they are up to date on where the order is. All of that needs to be orchestrated by the COM layer. But not only that, the COM layer, in particular for delivery, is responsible for actually translating the language of the commercial world to the language of those that will deliver, the systems that will deliver beyond the commercial layer. And so it is responsible for actually translating the commercial constructs to constructs that are understood by the provisioning systems, by the billing systems, and so on. And it should take that responsibility seriously, because if you don't do that, then you're putting the burden onto those layers downstream of you, downstream of the commercial layer, to really have to do that translation themselves, to have that understanding in the system itself, and therefore to have to make changes in those systems every time you innovate in the commercial layer. And that shouldn't be the case. On the other side, the responsibility of the SOM to run the actual technical delivery and to initiate the billing events those are triggered from the COM to the SOM so that those processes at a more technical level, at a more granular level, can be executed. But it definitely should not be the responsibility of the SOM layer to have to translate the constructs from the commercial layer. It should be past the information. But what do we expect the SOM to do? We expect the SOM to keep the commercial layer informed of where things are at in the process of delivery. Because if it doesn't do that, then even if there aren't any problems, we will not be able to know what has happened, what has in fact been delivered, and therefore during change requests at a later stage, we would not be able to actually execute those change requests because we don't know the truth of what has actually been done. And in the cases where things did go wrong, it's really important that the SOM layer has communicated those events back to the commercial layer that is, as we said before, responsible for communicating both internally to the sales teams, to the support teams, and so on, but also externally to the customer to ensure that the customer understands and the internal teams understand what has happened, whether the order has fallen out or whether there are potential delays that the delivery is running into, and therefore everyone needs to be kept up to date so that there are no surprises, so that everybody knows what milestones have we actually passed. And that's really important in the delivery process. If we're not actually up to date, then we're blind. We're then bombarding the technical teams and the billing teams with questions as to where things are at, and wasting time, wasting resources, and creating a really bad user experience for our customers. If we look at the end-to-end process, quite often when talking about the commercial layer, quite often people think, okay, we'll capture the order, we'll do CPQ, we'll implement CPQ, and that's basically what we need. But actually, the end-to-end process is much, much wider than that, and doesn't just impact the order capture, but it impacts the delivery during that order capture process. So it's not just CPQ, it is actually the product catalog and the structure of the product catalog, the pricing and the pricing rules, and all of the things that drive the commercial negotiations for a deal. And then comes the actual order capture, and then the submission of that order. But as you're doing your order capture, one thing that really matters, and Vish alluded to it just before, is the enrichment of that order with information that is essential for you to be able to actually deliver the order and the services that were ordered within that deal. If we are not able to capture that information at the right time, then we fall into the trap of thinking that we've delivered everything. The customer is told your service is ready, it's been activated, but there are essential pieces of information that are required to be able to configure that service properly. And those have been missed. And so now you go back and the delays start and the bad customer experience starts. So having a system that already ensures, or having a process that already ensures that the enrichment of the order with information that are not essential for the deal making, for the commercials, but essential for the delivery of that order are captured. And then moving on to while actually orchestrating the commercial events around the commercial order, so that we can actually create the information that's required by the downstream systems to be able to deliver both provisioning and billing, being able to create that translation as a responsibility of the COM layer of your process in the commercial world to explain to the downstream systems what it is that they actually have to do, without them really needing to have been told previously about the innovation that happened in the commercial layer. It really is important that that is the way you structure your process and your systems architecture, because if you don't do that, then you're going to burden your downstream systems with changes that are required in order for them to be able to have that understanding of the commercial world, or even worse, to burden the commercial layer with a structure that is with a commercial supposedly structure for selling those products that actually mimics the technical structure so that you can deliver it. And both of those are really bad scenarios for you to actually have implemented, and will impact your ability to sell and to deliver. And then, of course, running alongside those, and for the lifetime of the order, and for the lifetime of the subscriptions once they've been delivered, are in-flight changes, order in-flight changes. We'll talk about them in a little bit. And obviously, the lifetime of the subscription and the changes that will happen to the subscription. And all of those need to communicate back into the catalog process, the CPQ and order capture process, because information that has been fed back from the existing install base, once it's gone live, back into the process of change is really essential for you to be able to actually carry out commercially valid changes to the services subscriptions and indeed orders that are in flight. So, in-flight change, is it really something that you should think about? Does it happen a lot? Yes, it happens way too often for you to ignore it. However, it is actually quite often ignored in implementations of commercial layers. It is often ignored as part of the process. In fact, quite often it's relegated to the downstream systems, to the technical systems, for these types of in-flight changes to happen directly in those systems. But that's going to cause you problems, because what that actually means is that you're implementing changes to an order that was configured very carefully to create value for the customer and obviously be profitable for the service provider, for yourselves. And now you're saying that we're going to actually allow changes, technical changes, to this order that do not abide by those rules on one side, or we have to replicate those rules in the different places, in the different systems that that we allow changes to happen in order for us to maintain the integrity of the commercial proposition. Both of those, again, are really bad situations to find yourselves in, because if you don't replicate those rules, or you don't apply the rules, I should say, then you're in a place where you're going to be missing on revenue. You're going to be destroying the integrity of your commercial proposition. And if you try to replicate the rules, then you're running into duplication of rules, duplication of effort, and running the risk of deviation. And again, deviation will mean something is not going to go right. Either it's going to be missed revenue for you, or it's going to be overcharging for the customer, or bad proposition in total and bad customer experience for the customer. Order in-flight changes, what we should consider in that context: ensuring no duplication of commercial catalog constructs and rules, as we just said, ensuring commercial integrity of any placed orders, imposing a point of no return to make sure that once the order has actually been fulfilled up to a particular point, or once the component, a service within that order has been fulfilled up to a particular point, then we don't allow changes to that component within the order. It's important to think about, now that we're actually in flight, we're delivering something, that when we're making changes, when an in-flight change is requested, we need to actually have the ability within our systems and within our processes to pause the technical delivery and then to resume the technical delivery with the ability to put some remedial action or remedial processes in place to execute those first as the process is being resumed. It really is important that we think about these things, and that whatever architecture you implement, whatever business processes you put in place, that this essential part of actually placing orders, the in-flight changes that happen very frequently, are taken into account. Because if you don't do that, then basically you've created a mechanism where you've captured the initial requirement from the customer, but you're not able to really fulfill through your implementation of the system and the processes that you've implemented. You're not really able to fulfill with integrity, with commercial integrity, the demands of the customer. Thanks, Vish. And alongside that, it's really important, as we said, that we implement and put in place the processes and the system that supports those processes, that allows the customer and the internal teams to be well informed of where the delivery process is at, ensuring that during the whole process, the end-to-end process, everybody actually understands where things stand, who is actually acting on the order and on the services within that order, people understanding their responsibilities within that process, people understanding their abilities within that process. What have they been empowered to do, and what are they supposed to seek approval for from somebody else? Ensuring that everybody is pushing towards the same goal in order to deliver a customer experience that is second to none to the customer during the whole process, not just up to the point of deal making, but all throughout the process. Because if you're not actually well informed during the process as to where things are at, and whether you've passed the point of no return or not, whether certain things have changed during the delivery, or and the customer comes in with a new request, our ability to be able to service the customer, to give them information at the time as to what they can and can't do, should and shouldn't do, is all contingent on us having communicated correctly to the internal teams. And if we don't do that, then our delivery process, our ability to deliver, and our ability to create a second to none customer experience diminishes. So, thinking about all these things, Telco One, the solution that CloudSense have put out to the market, covers all of these processes from start to finish. It includes all of these processes from the moment a prospect is identified, to provide them with a quick quote so they can be engaged quickly, so that they can be informed based on system-driven interactions with the catalog, with the actual product catalog, to give them indicative pricing in their for our ability to engage the customer and get them interested in the services that we will provide them, to our ability to run and capture a large number of addresses, validate those addresses, run availability checks for network services, to running our order enrichment and enriching the order at the right time by the right people in order to capture the information that's required for us to be able to deliver the services that are being ordered, to running in-flight changes and in-life changes, including those essential part changes that Vish talked about: novation, upgrades, downgrades, moves. All of those types of changes, all of those processes are actually part of the solution that we are providing through Telco One.
Thanks, Fawzi. Thank you so much for taking us through that. So we've just covered quite a lot of material over the last 3 sessions, and probably just to summarize what we've looked at right the way through these sessions, we started off with quoting, and we started off with the notion of being fast. We've got to be accurate with these quotes, but it's also the starting point of when your customers start to see the value of you and actually how serious you are about their business by the ability to provide quotes in a quick and accurate manner, but also being able to translate their business requirements into a solution that you can really solve for quickly and easily without having to take weeks and months to produce a commercial document that they can then review and make a decision on. The other key thing we looked at was around communication and how important it is for you to have a consistent level of communication with your customers, but also meeting their demands in terms of the mediums and the times when they want to be communicated to, but then also looking internally to your business to make sure that whatever communication you give your customers, it's spread right the way through the company and everyone can see it. But everyone's talking with the same tone and the same intention to give the customer the best experience. And today we've just covered off delivery, which is extremely important, and it rounds out everything we've just talked about in terms of making sure that that end-to-end journey is kept in a really, really neat and packaged way, but giving your customers that full 360 view and a level of communication that they really need and want to make sure that they buy from you again, and they continually to talk about other people, that how great you are and what and giving you guys great NPS results. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Ed. Are there any questions, Ed?
Right, yeah, so thank you very much, guys. Yeah, we've probably got time for one question. We'll get to any others that we didn't get to personally. We'll send answers to people, but one that I think is interesting to get to is this one here. In-flight change looks interesting. Does this work for all products or just for some of them? How would you do this to support faster products like mobile? I reckon that's probably for Fawzi.
Thanks, Ed. It absolutely needs to be a process that is for all types of products. It is essential in any type of order for you to be able to make changes before the order has been completely delivered. What is key here is the point of no return of the order. Once an order has reached the point of no return, then any type of change that you can do needs to be halted up until the point where the service has been fulfilled completely and is live, and then you can carry out changes to that service or to that subscription while it's live. So you go into the in-life change scenario rather than an in-flight change scenario. And so in the case of fast products, meaning delivered fast, and therefore, is there time to actually do changes in flight? Absolutely there is, because they are delivered fast. However, they're not that fast for them to not allow a customer to change their mind about a particular subscription that they've purchased, a mobile subscription that they purchased, wanting to have, I don't know, extra services added to it, extra add-ons, or more devices, or accessories that they want to buy with it, and so on. Up until the point of no return. Once the point of no return has been reached, then obviously you would put a stop to any type of in-flight change, and you wait until the service is delivered. But the in-flight change process is essential for all orders that are being placed.
Okay, thank you, Fawzi. Well, we've hit time now, so we're going to have to wrap up. Thank you very much to Vish and Fawzi for presenting. Thank you, everyone who tuned in, especially those who tuned in for all three. Anyone who missed the first two, we will be sending links to watch the first two on demand, all three on demand, which if you share with your colleagues or anyone who you think would be interested in it, that would be great. And yeah, it just leaves me to say thank you, everyone, and have a lovely day.